The year was 2018, and 29-year-old Amy Baker just purchased a new car. At noon, Amy thought it would be fun to invite 3 of her closest friends to hop in her new car and drive to the beach. Not 3 hours after her purchase and her first drive in her new ride, Amy turned the corner of the road without thoroughly assessing traffic, and was sideswiped by a vehicle that never had a chance to slow down. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but the car had irreparable damage, and left Amy with a costly ticket plus points on her license. Let's face it, driver's ed was a while ago. Over the years, our perfect double-handed grip on the steering wheel may have slipped a little, or perhaps other bad habits have crept in as well. When drivers are negligent, they can cause accidents and take lives. But even everyday driving habits can have the same effect. The longer you own a car, the more driving habits you acquire. Unfortunately, not all of these habits are good ones, and the more time we spend behind the wheel, the harder it is to break them. Even though we all see ourselves as perfect drivers, bad driving habits can not only affect your wallet, your car's performance and its reliability, but also your chances of making it home safely. So here are 9 driving habits that can ruin your car and drain your wallet. Filling up with the wrong octane fuel. Many drivers have no idea which fuel type they should use. Some assume that higher priced gasoline is better for their vehicle, while others assume that there's no difference and go for the cheapest option instead. Whether done by mistake or trying to save money on fuel costs, putting low octane fuel into an engine that requires a higher octane, or vice versa, can cause problems that destroy your engine. So what happens if you put lower octane fuel into an engine that requires high octane gas? If you fill an engine designed to run on high octane gas with a lower octane, you will notice the effects almost immediately. The first and most immediate side effect is poor engine performance. Depending on how long you've been using the lower octane fuel, the erratic combustion produced from this error can cause overheating and irreversible damage. Secondly, you'll notice that lower octane fuel causes pinging and knocking. Knocking occurs when fuel burns unevenly in your engine cylinders. The result? An annoying noise, the building of harmful carbon deposits that clog your cylinder walls, and potential damage to your engine's pistons and spark plugs. Long-term use of the wrong fuel often results in engine failure, engine fires, and a sharp decrease in fuel economy. So what happens if you put higher octane fuel into an engine that doesn't need it? There is a strange myth that using higher octane fuel is better for your car's performance, even if your engine doesn't require it. Newsflash, it's not. There are some engines that were not designed to burn higher octane fuel, and you may see a reduction in power and fuel economy. So just make sure that you pick the correct octane gas the next time you fill up. Riding the clutch. There are 2 common ways that clutches die in manual transmission cars. The most common is that the clutch disc wears out. That happens over time, due to natural slippage that takes place when you engage the clutch to get the car moving. Eventually, the friction just wears out the disc, and the clutch starts to slip, requiring you to replace it. The second most common cause of your clutch failing comes from riding the clutch. If you don't know what riding the clutch is, let me explain. When you drive a manual transmission car, you need to press the clutch in before changing gears. When you're in the slow lane and you're moving at a snail's pace, sometimes drivers ride the clutch, or press it in halfway, making the car move very slowly, keeping with traffic. Although this is practical, it's also very hard on your clutch. It can have disastrous consequences. Riding the clutch will often immensely shorten its life, and it's a dangerous habit to have. The telltale sign that you're causing harm to the clutch is a distinctive burning smell coming from the clutch plates as they slip on the gearbox shaft. If you do notice this smell, adjust your footing accordingly. Running a cold engine at high revs. Everybody likes revving their engine every once in a while, but revving your car at high RPMs during cold weather could have disastrous consequences for your engine. When you first start a cold engine, particularly in the winter time, it takes a while for your car's engine oil to build up pressure and fully circulate throughout the engine. That means for those first few seconds after you start your car on a cold day, crucial components of your engine aren't properly lubricated and therefore aren't fully protected. That's why with modern fuel-injected cars, you're not supposed to step onto the gas at all when you start the engine. You just start the car, the engine starts and automatically idles at a nice low RPM. If you really stab the gas pedal the moment you start the car right away, you could potentially damage the engine's rings, its cylinder walls, its valves, the crankshaft, the bearings, and other parts that absolutely require proper lubrication, increasing the risk of damaging your engine tenfold. As a result, you should wait until the engine gets up to working temperatures before pushing it to high RPMs. Resting your hand on the gear stick. Many people have the habit of resting their hand on the gear stick while driving. This shouldn't be done for several reasons. The most obvious is that you need both hands to steer. Another harmful effect is that such small yet constant pressure on the gearbox turns it into kind of a cocktail shaker, displacing synchronizers and gears. This in turn leads to problems with shifting. Whether you own an automatic or manual car, a transmission that's not working correctly can cause serious problems both under the hood and out on the road. Furthermore, transmissions are very complex and have many moving parts, so this bad habit can easily cost you $10,000 or more in transmission repairs. Tailgating. Whether you're guilty of doing this or you've been on the receiving end of it, tailgating drives both parties involved completely crazy. The person in front of the car gets annoyed at the person in the car behind them because of their unwillingness to back off, and vice versa because the person in the front won't speed up. Tailgating can also lead to vindictive driving, such as brake checking. Keeping it plain and simple, there should always be a minimum of 2 seconds of distance between you and the other car on the road. Slamming into potholes. Some cities may have worse pothole problems than others, but the reality is that potholes are everywhere, and those road gashes can make for more than a bumpy ride. When hit head-on, potholes can also damage your car's suspension, steering, and alignment. Stay alert and drive defensively to avoid potholes. If you can't avoid hitting a pothole without crossing into another lane of traffic at the last minute, slow down instead. You'll minimize the impact and the potential damage. Speeding over speed bumps. Similar to hitting potholes at high speed, going over a speed bump too quickly is another driving habit that can compromise your car's alignment. Speed bumps are designed to keep both pedestrians and drivers safe. By slowing down when you approach a speed bump, you can help your neighbors and keep your car happy. Be extra careful if your vehicle rides low to the ground. Hitting a speed bump can dent your bumpers or damage components in the undercarriage. Keeping your foot on the brake while going downhill. Many motorists tend to keep their foot on the brake pedal while driving downhill, in order to be ready to stop at any moment. If you spent time driving in hilly areas, you've probably seen warning signs advising you not to ride your brakes on those lengthy descents. But what's really going on with your car? And what are the hidden dangers of riding your brakes? It's important to understand that a tremendous amount of friction is involved in stopping something as heavy as a moving vehicle, and the biggest byproduct of this process is heat. There are both short-term dangers and long-term hazards of riding your brakes. The biggest danger of riding your brakes is the possibility of generating so much heat the brake fluid actually comes to a boil. Under these conditions, pushing the brake pedal won't build pressure in the system, and the brakes will fail. Brake fade can also occur when a large amount of heat causes a chemical reaction with the friction material itself. The short-term effects of brake fade or all-out total brake failure are extremely dangerous. But even if you're lucky enough to avoid this terrifying situation, the long-term effects of riding your brakes can cause substantial maintenance issues. Over time, the heat buildup discussed earlier can also damage components not meant to handle that sort of stress on a regular basis. Your rotors can warp, impacting brakeability and unevenly wearing the pads. Non-metal parts such as caliper seals and plastic parts in your brakes can actually melt, causing your brake fluid to leak and complete brake failure at high speeds. Letting your gas tank sit near empty. Fuel gauges are notoriously inaccurate. You may think that you have another 40 or 50 miles left in the tank after the low fuel light comes on, but you might not. It really depends on the driving conditions. Furthermore, gasoline can act as a coolant in your fuel system, and keeping not enough gas in your tank can cause these parts to overheat and malfunction. Your catalytic converter, fuel pump, and fuel system could all be damaged, particularly if you run out of gas completely. You can prevent this type of damage by keeping your gas tank at least a quarter full. Overloading the car. Every vehicle has a weight limit, which can be found in your car's owner's manual. And yes, this even includes heavy-duty pickup trucks, particularly if you use your car or truck for towing or hauling. You must be very careful not to overload them, and to follow the manufacturer's instructions. If you do put more weight than recommended, it can result in several problems. Not only will your engine have a hard time pulling and towing the excess weight, but it will also use more fuel and could even break down under the stress. Also, your car's braking system will have a hard time coping with the additional weight, which will result in poor braking, unsafe driving dynamics, or even your tires exploding at high speeds. Taking this into account, it's far better to make 2 trips than to overload your car and risk a high repair bill. Not checking tire pressures. Checking your tire pressure is an incredibly easy thing to neglect that could result in a big unnecessary accident, and we're sure that's the last thing you want. A car that has different pressure in its 4 wheels could be prone to erratic handling. If you get it wrong going around a particularly tricky corner, you know what the result can be. Furthermore, incorrect tire pressures will harm your car's gas mileage and cause uneven tire wear. Well guys, those are 9 driving habits that ruin your car and drain your wallet. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. Also, if you like what you see at the channel, subscribe and put post notifications on. You could also follow the channel on Instagram at Modern Muscle YT. I'm Jeff from Modern Muscle, and I'll see ya next time.